Okay, welcome back to Rosary Makers. Today we are going to learn how to make a rosary. So just to go over what we need our Hail Mary beads, and I'm using my flocked tray, which you do not have to have. You can do this without a flocked tray, but it's just nicer for me to keep my things organized. So I've already counted out my beads. I have my 5 decades of 10 Hail Mary beads each in these 5 container areas. And then I also have my 3 extra Hail Marys that I use at the tail end of our rosary, or at the bottom part of our rosary. We've got our 6 our Father beads, and we have our cord, our number 9 braided and bonded cord. This is going to be 5 feet long, or 60 inches. I also have my crucifix, my center. I have my rosary tool, my scissors, my clear nail polish. Hopefully it's instant dry. And then if you choose to want to burn the tail ends of your rosary, which I'm going to do today, I'm going to use this lighter. But again, you don't have to do that. You can leave little tails on instead. So this is what we need to have to get started. So I'm going to start with undoing my rosary cord. So I'm just going to take this knot out real quickly. I'm going to undo the cord, and I'm going to run my hand up and down from tip to tip just to make sure that there is no knots. Sometimes little knots get in there. We want to make sure nothing is knotted. Okay, so we take one end of our cord, doesn't matter which end. We're going to pick up our center piece. I don't know if the camera can pick this up or not, but one side of the centerpiece has the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and the other side has the Sacred Heart of Jesus. So I'm not sure if the camera can pick that up or not. But we're going to have Mary the top side. Okay, so the Immaculate Heart of Mary is going to be top side. I'm just going to take my tray here, and I'm going to turn it sideways so that I'm up against this black tablecloth, black table cover, so that you can see things a little bit better as I work through it, okay? All right, so we are going to have Mary top side. You're going to have the 2 holes up on the top here and the bottom hole on the bottom. I'm going to take the end of my cord, doesn't matter which end. I'm going to take it and I'm going to put it in this right hole, and I'm coming from the top of Mary going in the hole. And then I'm just going to show you here with my finger. So we have this part that's called what we call the tail, or I'm going to refer to it as the tail, okay? And then this is the rest of our cord here. Okay, so for the tail here, we want to make sure that that is not too long, okay? We want to make sure that that is only about 1 inch to 1.25 inches at the very longest. So about like that. If you have your tail here too long, you're going to run out of cord, and you won't be able to complete your rosary. And the rosary, for the most part, is done with 1 cord. So if you get halfway through and you run out of cord, you're going to have to start all over again. So we don't want that to happen. So we want to keep this tail pretty short. So 1 inch, very longest 1.25 inches, okay? But roughly around the 1 inch, 1.1 inches. Okay, so if you notice, I have a V here. So the bottom cord, or the tail, is coming out the bottom, and it's kind of pointing up. And then the rest of my cord is kind of pointing down here. I'm going to just transfer that and pinch right at that hole with my right hand so that I can pick up my cord tool with my left hand. Okay, so remember, just like we did the barrel knots, I'm going to lay my centerpiece on the side of my tool, okay? And I'm going to hold right at that hole that the cord is going through with my left thumb, just like that, okay? This tail is probably sticking up in the air, or it could be laying across. Kind of want it to lay a little bit across, so I just kind of bend it down like that. I'm going to take my right hand with the cord, the long end of my cord, and I'm going to cross over. This is not part of the barrel knot yet. This is just joining these 2 pieces of the cord together so that they're kind of one. So I'm just crossing over top of that tail to just join them together, okay? Now I'm going to make my X. So I have 1, 2, 3. Okay? So let me go back and do that again. So I have my tail. I'm going to lay it, kind of push it down so it lays across. I'm going to join with that tail. Okay? And sometimes when you join with that tail, this little tail will fall into the crevice. That's fine. Okay? Don't worry about it. But I'm just joining right here. Now I'm going to actually start my loops. So I make my X. There's 1, there's 2, and there's 3. See how my tail just fell down into the crevice? No worries, don't worry about it. I'm going to hold with my left index finger. I'm going to find the end of my cord, just like we do with a barrel knot. I'm going to tuck in the back here, behind all these wrappings, behind all these cords, all the way in the back, and it's going to go underneath all those cords. Don't worry about the tail that's in the crevice. It's not going to be an issue or anything, so don't worry about it. Okay, we'll pull that all through so it lines up right next to my wraps. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like. I'm going to slide that off. Okay, now if you notice, I like to have a little space here where I have my knot. So I'm going to start to pull my knot tight. Okay, but before I pull it too tight, I want to determine where I want it to be placed. Now, some rosary makers will make their knot all the way up against their centerpiece. Perfectly fine, but my preference is to have a little looser rosary. It's just nicer to pray on, I think. Again, this is just a personal preference. So I leave anywhere from an 1/8 of an inch to a 1/4 of an inch space here. Nothing more than a 1/4 of an inch though, because then it's too much space. But I kind of like to leave a little bit of a space so that the reason for that is, if you notice, see how my cord can kind of move freely a little bit? Or if you have that up right against that, you can't really move the cord. It's kind of a little stiff, in my opinion. So I always leave that little bit of space. Again, this is just my preference. It doesn't matter. You can have it right up against the centerpiece if you prefer. Okay? So that's what it should look like. So here's Mary. We're in the top right hole. Your tail is just laying right here next to the regular cord. And I've got this little bit of space here between my knot. Okay? At this point, I'm going to cut, because everything looks great, I'm going to go ahead and cut my tail because I don't want it to be in my way. Now, many rosary makers will cut their tail so it's about an 1/8 of an inch kind of left over, like that. And you can do that and leave that tail on there, and then when we are done making our rosary, we would put the nail polish on there, including that tail. I don't particularly like it. That's, again, my preference. So when I cut mine, I cut them all the way up right next to, be careful not to cut this main cord or you have to start all over. I'm going to cut right up next to the knot without cutting the other cord and without cutting the knot. So I'm going to zoom in here so hopefully you can see that little tip there that's just left over. And then this is where my burning tool comes in. So I turn that on, and because this is white cord, I don't want to put the flame directly on the cord. When I do that, it turns it very brown or black. It kind of looks dirty, just doesn't look nice. Your eye kind of gets drawn to it with all the white. So I just put it up really close, because this is a nylon cord. So if you put it really close, the heat of it will melt it enough that then you can just tap, 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 and it will blend it into the knot. So watch what I do. So I get really close, but I don't actually touch it. And you can see it's starting to melt, if you can see that. And then I tap, tap, tap. And there it is. It's gone. It's been melted into this knot. So now you have this nice clean knot. And that's just my preference. Okay, so you can leave the little tail or you can do what I just did. Okay, so we're not going to nail polish yet. We do that at the very end because we don't want to get nail polish all over ourselves as we are continuing to make our rosary. Okay, so now the next step is we are going to put our first decade of Hail Marys on. So remember, the key to making a rosary is to constantly be counting to make sure that you have the right number of beads. It's always good to just keep counting, because it's a pain when you put a knot in and it's a great knot, everything looks great, and then you realize, oh, I've got 11 beads on here. And sometimes you can fix it, and sometimes if you go all the way through your rosary, you don't discover that you made that mistake, you have to cut the whole rosary apart and start completely from scratch. So I always think, it's the saying, measure twice, cut once, right? When you're cutting something. In rosary making, it's count as many times as you can before you move on to the next knot. That's my motto. Okay, so we're going to put our 10 beads on. So count them as you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7, and 8, and 9, and 10. Okay, so we have our 10 beads. I'm going to count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to push them down all the way down to that knot we made. Again, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So in my counting, I always do 3. Hey, it's like the Holy Trinity, right? Can't go wrong with 3. So I count it 3 times. 3 when I put it on, put the beads on, 3 before I push it down the cord. I count it again, and then the 3rd time I count at the very bottom here right before I'm going to make my knot. Okay, so now here's another difference with rosary makers. Some like to put their knot here right up against this Hail Mary, and it makes it kind of stiff like this. I don't particularly care for that. I like it a little looser because when I pray, I like to be able to kind of have a little separation between my beads. I like to move them. It helps me to keep count a little better. So I like to leave just an ever so slight space here. So in order to get that little space, I turn my tool on its side. So you're seeing the side of your tool. And I lay my beads so that the Hail Mary bead falls at the base of that tool. Okay? I then place my thumb on that string. I turn my tool back up, and now I'm going to make a barrel knot like you have learned and have mastered, hopefully, at this point. So we cross over, under, we make the X. That's our first loop, our second loop, our 3rd loop. I hold on with my left index finger. I find the end of my cord. I then tuck it behind and underneath. It comes out the front. I pull until it comes together. I then slide it off. And then I use my thumb to kind of place here at the end of this Hail Mary bead to help hold that space a little bit for me. And then I go ahead and I tighten that knot down. And I keep that ever so small space. It's like no more than 1/8 of an inch, no more. Might even be a little less than that, just depends on what you like. But whatever you decide that length is going to be between that last Hail Mary bead and this knot, you're going to consistently do that throughout this particular rosary so that they all line up and they all look the same. Okay, so you see I have that little space there. So here's what it looks like. Our center piece, we got a little space, and then our last knot. Okay? Now I'm ready to move on to my Our Father bead. Okay, so now we grab one of our Father beads. We place that on. Now the knots on the around the Our Father beads, we want those to be super tight. Tight so that it's almost like the two knots and this Our Father bead are almost one. I like to look at it as the Holy Trinity. You've got the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. They're three separate entities, three separate persons, right? But one God. That's the same thought here, okay? So think Holy Trinity as you're doing this. So in order to keep that knot super close to this Our Father bead, I'm going to actually lay it so that this Our Father bead is resting, the top of the bead is resting right on the edge of my tool here. And I hold with my left hand, so it should look like that, okay? I'm gonna cross over. I'm gonna make my X, 1, 2, and 3. I'm gonna hold with my left index finger. I'm going to find my end of my string. I'm going to place that in behind and underneath. Comes out the front, I pull. Whoops. And get it tight. And see how close that is already to that bead? That's great because that's what we want. So I'm gonna slide it off. And then as I tighten this down, I'm going to make sure that I'm pushing it and tightening it towards the Our Father bead so that it is super tight all together, just like the Holy Trinity. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, three persons in one God. See the symbolism? I love the symbolism of these knotted rosaries. You just need to sit me down and I could go on and on. All the colors, all the different knots, all of these different things. There's so many symbols. It's beautiful. Okay, so here's what it looks like. So we've got our Mary centerpiece. We've got that little space here. We've got it super tight here, the two knots with the Our Father. And now we're ready for our next decade. Okay, so we go back. We grab our next set of 10. We'll place them on. 1, 2, 3. I guess I should count quietly. Okay, so we've got our 10 beads on now. I'm going to count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to push it down. I'm going to count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, I'm ready to make my next knot. Remember, I want there to be a little space, so I'm going to turn my tool sideways. I'm going to bring my cord up so that my Hail Mary beads reach the bottom of the tool. I'm going to place my thumb on that cording. I then take it across, bring it underneath. I make my X, 1, 2, and 3. I hold on with my index finger. I take the end of my cord and I place it behind and then underneath so it comes out the front. I pull that tight. I slide it off. Remember, I place my thumb a little bit here on the end of this last Hail Mary bead so that I can kind of gauge that little bit of a space that I'm looking for. And I just tighten this up and move this down so that I have the space. I'm going to be looking back at this first decade so I can make sure I have the same space here. I want it the same exact distance from the end of the Hail Mary bead to the knot, okay? So that when I'm all done with my rosary, it lines up so pretty when you hold it up, and It just looks so nice. We want it so nice for God, for Mary. Okay, so if you notice here, my space is roughly the same here as it is here. Okay, roughly the same space. Okay, so now I'm ready for my next Our Father bead. I place my Our Father bead on, slide it all the way down to this knot. Remember, I want this knot to be very close to the Our Father bead, so I'm going to place it way up on the tool so that the Our Father bead is almost on the top, almost. Okay, and then I'm going to cross over. I'm going to make my X, 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to hold on to it with my index finger. I'm going to take the end, place it behind the wraps and underneath. So it comes out the front. I'm going to pull that tight. Make sure it goes in front of that bead though. And then I'm going to slide it off. I'm going to make sure that I'm constantly pushing it towards that bead so it's really nice and tight. Tight, 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 tight. We want the Holy Trinity. There's our Holy Trinity. Nice and tight. Now remember, after you make a knot and stuff, you have a little wiggle room to be able to move things and slide things, but not a lot. So you want to try to get it as accurate as you can, okay? So now we're our next decade. So place those on. Remember, count as you go. Okay, I've got my 10 on, and again, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to slide it down. I'm going to count again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, remember I want that little bit of space, so I'm going to turn my tool sideways. I'm going to lay my beads up so that the beads are at the very bottom of my tool. I'm going to place my thumb, left thumb there, and I'm going to rotate the tool back. I'm going to cross over. Make my X is 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to hold with my left index finger. I'm going to place the cord behind and underneath. I'm going to slide it off. I'm going to use my thumb to kind of help hold that little bit of space. Just going to kind of make sure I don't pull it all the way up against my Hail Mary beads because I've decided to put a space, so I got to keep that same space. I'm going to hold this up to make sure that my space is the same going forward. Same distance as the one over here, like that. Once I've determined that, I'm ready to move on to my next Our Father bead. We place our Father bead here. Okay, now remember, I want this to be the Holy Trinity. I want them all tight together like one God, right? The Holy Trinity is tight. Okay, so I'm going to lay it so that the bead is almost on the top. I'm going to hold with my left hand the rest of the beads. I'm going to cross over, make my X. That's 1, 2, and 3. Hold with my index finger, find the end of my string. I'm going to tuck that back and behind underneath. Comes out the front. I pull tight. See how it keeps looping around this? Make sure you move that around so it's up next to the wraps, okay? I'm going to slide it off. Remember, I'm going to make sure as I tighten to push that towards, gently towards my Our Father bead so that it's all nice and tight. We have our Holy Trinity right here. Okay. Nicely done. Okay. We're ready for the next decade. Yeah, so it's really pretty easy. Once you learn that barrel knot, it makes it pretty easy. Just make sure you're counting. So I'm going to be silent so we can all count. Okay, so I'm going to count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to slide it down to the knot. I'm going to count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, remember I'm going to want that little bit of space here because it's by the Hail Mary beads. So I'm going to turn my tool sideways, lay my beads so that they're at the bottom of the tool. I'm going to put my thumb on, rotate it back. I'm going to cross over, make my X, 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to hold with my left index finger. I'm going to take my tail and I'm going to tuck it behind and underneath my wraps. Whoops, a daisy. Come on, fella. It's going to come out the front. I'm going to slide it off. I'm going to keep my thumb here so I know exactly where I want my knot to end up. So I have a little bit of space, but not too much space. So now I can kind of pull away my thumb so I can kind of see this a little better. Oh. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to look back at my previous one to see if I've got the right amount of space here. So it looks like I'm good. I've got the same space here as I got over there. I'm just going to tighten, tighten, tighten my knot. Okay. Now I'm ready for my last Our Father bead on this main section. Now this is sometimes a confusion for a lot of people because, you know, there's 5 decades here, but in this section there's only 4 Our Fathers because the other 2 Our Fathers go at the beginning. So remember that. You only have 4 Our Fathers in this main section, but you have the 5 decades, okay? So remember, we want this knot really close to this B because we want the Holy Trinity, right? Tight, tight, tight. One God. Okay, so I'm almost going to lay the bead on top. I'm going to cross over, make my X, 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to hold with my index finger. I'm going to take the end of my tail, tuck it under behind and underneath so the cord comes out the front. I'm going to make sure it doesn't loop around my bead there. Pull tight, slide it off. Make sure I'm always pushing and twisting towards the Our Father bead so it's good and tight next to it. Pull it tight. And we have our Holy Trinity. Tight, tight. Okay, so here's what it's looking like. Here's what it's looking like. Okay, so this is our last decade that we're going to put on. We have 4 on here already. We've got our 4 Our Fathers. This is our last decade. And this, we do something very different at the end because we're going to be connecting back to our centerpiece. So right now we're going to put on our last 10 Hail Mary beads. So count those out. I've got my 10 on. All right, so I'm going to count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to slide it down. Count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, but this time I'm not going to make the knot that I have been doing at this point. I'm now going to rejoin to our centerpiece. Okay, so find your centerpiece. This is how we started, right? Well, I'm going to turn it upside down. Okay, so that our starting point is now on the left. Mary is still on top. The Immaculate Heart of Mary is still on top, but she's upside down right now. Okay, so this was our starting point. Mary's upside down, and I'm going to take the end of my cord and I'm going to go from the top of Mary here through this hole into it. I'm going to pull, 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 pull. Okay. Now, what I want to do at this point is I want to line up my Hail Mary beads so that I want to make this so it looks the same. So I'm going to hold this to be straight, and then I'm going to make sure that as it's laying here, usually I hang it up in the air, but it's kind of hard to do that with the video, so I'm just going to show you from this angle, okay? But I usually hold it up in the air, and I pull this until I get these Hail Mary beads to line up. I'm just going to lay this down so you can see it a little better, okay? So if you see here, my Hail Mary beads line up. My Our Father beads line up. So I know I've pulled this cord to the right length or the right spot, okay? So once I do that, then what I'm going to do is take this extra cord here. I'm going to actually tuck it under so it's actually coming out, so it's almost like right between these two beaded cords here, okay? So it's going underneath there. And you'll understand why in just a moment, okay? So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer this to my right hand, like we do. I'm going to pick up my tool. I'm going to place this on the side of my tool, hold it with my left thumb, and I'm going to take these beads and drape it over the top. Okay? Then I'm going to take this cord and I'm going to join, because it's kind of underneath here. Oops. It's underneath here, so I'm going to join him to this cord like we did at the beginning. Remember, this is like an extra loop that you do with the barrel knot when you're connecting here, okay? So I'm kind of joining it to make it one. It's like I'm laying it across the top. You know how we lay it across when we're doing the barrel knot, we lay it across and then we make our X. We're kind of doing that. So we're laying it across. Then I'm going to make my X. So there's 1. There's 2, and there's 3 loops. So I'm kind of working between my beads here, okay? I'm gonna hold this. I'm gonna turn it a little bit more upright so you can kind of see the trough. I'm gonna take my cord, I'm gonna tuck it in behind and underneath, and I'm gonna pull that out, okay? I'm going to then slide it off. And then this is the trickiest part. This is the hardest knot. Because as you're working it, you want to kind of hold it up. Normally I hold it up in the air. Because we want these 2 knots to line up. We want these Hail Mary beads to line up. So you want to make sure that you're pulling it and tightening it in the right spot. Because once you tighten it, you can't really undo it. You know, you can undo the knot, but you can't really move it once it gets too tight. So I'm constantly looking back at it to make sure that this knot is lined up with the other knot. So it all looks so pretty and lines up. And that the Hail Mary beads line up. Okay. So I'm just tightening now. Look at that. So see how my knots line up? Okay, but then my Hail Marys might not be. So let's just see what happens here. Oops, let me get this out of the way so we can see what's going on here. Okay, so it looks to me like this side is just ever so slightly up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold very tightly on the cord right above between the centerpiece and this knot so that this knot doesn't move. And then I'm going to come down and I'm going to use my fingernail and I'm going to pull just a little bit on this knot. And what that does is it's going to move those Hail Marys down a little bit. See how it moved those down? So now they're in line exactly where I want them. So you can see here that the knots are in line, the Hail Marys are in line, the Our Fathers are in line. And that way when you raise your rosary up, it looks nice. It's all in line and all put together, okay? So I'm just gonna go back and just double check that this knot is good and tight. Looks good. And I will tell you, this is probably the hardest knot that we do on the rosary because you have this beads on here that, you know, doesn't, it's kind of harder to work with it because of the beads on this side, okay? But you just practice it like everything else, and once you practice it enough, you will get it, trust me, okay? So now at this point, if you are doing the little tails, you would cut right about here, about 1/8 of an inch down, but I'm not doing little tails, I'm cutting those off, so I cut up all the way, but be careful not to cut your other cord, or you have to start all over. I'm gonna take my burning tool. I'm not going to touch it to it. I'm just going to melt it, put it up near it so the heat melts it because it's a nylon cord. And then I tap, 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 tap. It looks like I need to melt a little more. So I'm going to melt a little more. Tap, 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 tap. There we go. And now I have my finished knot. Now don't throw this away because we're going to need that for the rest of the rosary, okay? So it's not like the other tails that we cut off and stuff. We need this, so don't throw it away. But see how everything's lined up. Okay, I'm gonna hold it up so that the weight will take it down. But see, my knots are lined up, my Hail Marys are lined up, and my Our Fathers are lined up, okay? So we're doing good. Okay, so now we're gonna take our cord. Again, we're gonna go to the bottom of this centerpiece here, okay? And we're gonna actually latch onto this like we did at the very beginning of the rosary, okay? So we place it, Mary should be on top. We're gonna place our cord through, from the top, through the hole, down. We're gonna have a tail. Remember, we only want the tail to be about 1 inch long, 1.25 inches at the very most, but you wanna keep it around that inch mark, okay? We're gonna take this, I'm gonna grab it in my right hand again so I can place it on the side of my tool. I'm gonna hold with my thumb. Remember, your tail is probably sticking up. We wanna kinda try to just push it like this because we're gonna take our longer piece and we're gonna cross over it to join it. We're just joining, okay? Now we're going to make our X. That's our first loop, our second loop, our third loop. I'm gonna hold on. I'm gonna tuck underneath here with the end of the cord, pull it out the front. I'm gonna slide it off. Now, before you start tightening, you wanna be looking at these other knots over here because we want this space that's between the centerpiece and this knot to be the same as these. So it looks nice, right? We want everything to be consistent and looking nice because we want to please God and Mary and we want to do good work for them, right? We want to put out good rosaries for them. Okay, so I'm just going to keep moving this wherever I, need it to be. Now, I'm going to just show you here. I'm going to make it too long. Well, let's see if I can. Make it too long and it'd be like, oh no, see how that distance is too long in comparison to those? Well, here's the wonderful thing on this particular type of knot and the first knot. This little leftover tail, it can be used to move. So if you pull on that and slide this knot, you can slide it closer to the centerpiece. So I'm gonna do that. So see how I just pulled on that and then I slid the knot? And this is great. You can do this until you cut it. Once you cut it, you have a little less ability to do that. Okay? So I'm going to pull a little bit more because I think it needs to go just a little bit more. There we go. Perfect. I think that's about right now. Okay, so then I just push on both ends. That's how I tighten it up. Tight, tight. Double check everything's where I want it to be. Okay, so now I can cut my tail. So again, if you're doing tails with a leftover, you would cut it to about 1/8 of an inch. I'm not having tails, so I'm going to cut, making sure not to cut the other cord or my knot. Cut real as close as I can. See, I've got just a tiny little piece here that's sticking out. I take my lighter. I don't touch it because it's white. I just put it really close to melt that. See, I melted it. And then I tap, 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 tap. You don't want to touch this too much right away with your fingers. It's very hot. It's nylon, so plastic. So when it's hot like that, it will severely burn your fingers. So that's why I use the side of my lighter to just tap it down, and then I don't have to burn myself. Okay, so be really careful with that, because once this gets heated, it's like melted plastic, so, and it'll stick to your finger and continue to burn you. So try not to touch it. Okay, especially if you teach this to a child, make sure if they're going to do the burning, or maybe you should do the burning, just so nobody gets burned. Okay? All right, so now we are ready for an Our Father bead this time. Remember, this is the first Our Father bead that you use when you start your rosary. For the first decade that you pray, it's this Our Father that you're praying on to start that decade. So remember, you only have the 4 Our Fathers up here, and then the other 2 are going to be down here. Okay? All right, so we placed our Father bead. Remember, we want the Holy Trinity. We want it all nice and tight. So I'm going to pick it up, make sure that it's almost on top of my stick. I cross over. I make my X. 1, 2, and 3. I tuck behind, underneath. Whoops, make sure it's in front of that bead. I slide it off. I make a really good tight knot. Make sure I push it all the way up against that Our Father bead, so it's a good, tight, 3 persons in one Holy Trinity. And it's so nice. You just, every time you make this, you're going to think of the Holy Trinity. How wonderful is that? Okay, now we're going to put on our 3 Hail Marys that go in the front. Remember, this is for, we pray for faith, hope, and charity, or love. So we place those 3 on. And then just like we did with the Hail Marys back here, I like to have a little room there. So I'm going to do it exactly the same way. I'm going to leave that little bit of room. So I'm going to tilt this sideways, make sure my beads are at the end. I'm going to cross over. I'm going to hold with my thumb. Cross over, make my X. That's 1, 2, and 3. I hold with my index finger. I tuck the string behind and underneath so it comes out the front. Now, when I pulled it off, I keep my thumb here to keep that little bit of space like I did with the other decades, you know, after my Hail Marys. I like to have that little bit of space so I have a little bit of room. And then I can kind of look back here at my Hail Marys to see like how much space, and I try to look at that space there to be the same here. It's roughly about the same. It's not as important here because this isn't going to line up. Like these back here, it's more important that the spaces are the same so that your rosary lines up all nice like that. See how our Fathers line up, my Hail Marys line up. See that? We want that. Okay, so I've got that. Now I'm going to put on my last Our Father. This is your last bead, but again, this is not going to have a knot right after it. It's going to be a little bit different because at the same time as I am finishing this bead, I'm also going to attach our crucifix, okay? So here's Mary. here's our last bead. I don't have a knot here yet. I'm going to then take my crucifix right side up. I'm going to place the cord through the top of the hole, and I'm going to pull through so that I have about an inch of a distance between the end of my bead here. I'm just gonna lay this down so you can kind of see it. Okay, the end of my bead to this hole, about an inch here. That's what we're looking for, okay? All right, so I'm gonna pinch right there with my finger. This time though, I'm going to place it so that this cord is going across the top, okay? And I'm gonna lay my crucifix this time on top. And then what I like to do is I use my index finger here to kind of hold this place of the bead, I guess, per se. I lost grip here. Okay, so you see that this is the top part. This is going underneath. This is my tail, right? But I have this cord with my beads going over the top of my trough here, okay? And I'm using this index finger, if you notice, to kind of just line up next to this bead. Because here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to pretend like that none of this is here, and I'm gonna make a barrel knot. So I'm gonna cross over or join with this other cord, right? Okay, so I've just joined. Now, I would normally be making an X, and I am making an X, but I'm helping to keep this space here by holding my finger here. So all you have to do is just take it right across, right by the bead. 1, 2, 3. So I'm doing that right between the bead and my finger. And it's helping me to keep this space, which is what we want. Because sometimes if I don't do this, I lose this space when I'm trying to wrap, okay? So that's the way I do it. I just hold it with my finger like that, okay? Now, when you go to tuck it, you're gonna take the end of your string, and I'm going to go all the way over here. So I'm gonna go behind these cords that are sticking here, and all of these. So I'm gonna go, you see I'm sliding my crucifix just ever so slightly here off to the side so I can get back here, and I wanna get all the way back here behind these cords, behind these wraps. I'm gonna tuck in, go underneath all of it, and I'm gonna pull tight, okay? I'm gonna slide it off, and when I tighten up this knot, I'm gonna be pulling both the crucifix side and this cord side, both sides this time, and I wanna make sure I'm keeping that knot tight, tight, tight up against this Our Father bead, because remember, that's the Holy Trinity. We want it tight. 3 persons, but in one God, right? So we're gonna keep pushing this up tight next to this. Not towards the crucifix, but towards this Our Father. But see, we're on the other side. It's a little different for us this time. Okay? Super tight, right up against there. And we've got our finished knot. And we have this little bit of space here between that last knot and your crucifix. Again, it's for some flexibility and just makes it nicer to pray on. Okay, so this time I'm gonna, if you notice, I'm gonna kind of squeeze these 2 parts together so that I can reveal this tail. Where if I hold it like this, it's harder to get in there without accidentally cutting the knot. Okay, so I kind of squeeze these 2 together. And then I come in with my scissors. If you're leaving a tail, you would cut 1/8 of an inch here, but I'm not. I'm cutting all the way up. Unfortunately, it's a little harder next to this bead, so I've got a little longer one than I wanted. So I can go back in and see if I can trim that a little more. Oh, there we go. Okay, and then I keep bending it backwards so that this isn't too close to the bead. I don't want to burn the bead. So I'm gonna just gently put it in there to melt that. Melt, 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 melt. and then tap, 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 tap. And then I kind of tuck it. I kind of use my nail to kind of tuck it in a little bit. So it's inside there, like kind of more towards the hole. And then I just push on both knots towards the Our Father bead until it's nice and tight. And so then we have almost our finished product. We've done beading, we've done tying our knots. So here's what it looks like. That's what it looks like in the end. Okay, I'm gonna just move my tray here out of the way. And then if you notice, I don't know how much is on the camera here, but if I were to extend it, do you see how my knots are lining up? Our Fathers are lining up. Everything's lining up. And we have our completed rosary. There we go. You see it all now? So now our last step is to put on the nail polish. So the only knots that we need to worry about nail polishing, of course you can do whatever you want, but the only ones you should be for sure nail polishing are the ones where we cut the tails off of. So that would be the 3 knots here around the centerpiece, and then this last final knot before the crucifix. So 4 knots that you want to nail polish. So I just, again, it has to be clear because we don't want any color there. You should try to get the Insta-Dry. So I start down here and I just hold this between my 2 fingers like this and I just paint around the knot. No big deal. Oops. You don't need a lot, just enough to kind of lacquer that basically, and it just helps to keep the knot kind of in place and from unraveling. It's just an extra piece of security. You don't have to do it, but we do. So I've done that one, and I'm gonna do all 3 of these. I've done the second one here. And I just come up here and I try to hold the beads away so they don't get stuck to the nail polish. And I just paint both of these all the way around. Like I said, you don't need a lot. You don't want it to be all, goopy and drippy or anything like that. Just enough to give that extra security. And then it should dry anywhere, if it's the Insta, it should dry anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute. So what I do is I have a place where I hang my rosaries as I work. And so I just let it hang there and let it dry for just, about a minute. And then once it's dry, you can put it in its baggie that it came from. So I'm just gonna put mine off to the side to let it dry, and then I'm just gonna use another rosary that I have here to show you how I put it back in its baggie. So you're gonna use the baggie that the beads came in. So you just open it up, have that ready to go, and then I pick up my rosary. This is an Our Lady of Guadalupe rosary. And I basically kind of see the size of the bag. So I loop around my finger like this, once, like that. I loop again, kind of like you're wrapping up an extension cord, I guess. I like to try to make sure the center and the crucifix are on top and facing up or whatever. And then I grab that all together, and then I just place that into my baggie, and there you go. And I like to try to move it around so that my crucifix, like I said, is facing up, my centerpiece is facing up, and then I get all the air out and I seal it up, and you're all done. And you're ready to put it in a bag or whatever and turn them in, and you're ready to move on to your next rosary. So I hope that helped. Again, it's just a matter of practicing as much as you can, just like the barrel knot. So happy rosary making, and God bless.